So welcome to the Inbox Attack Weekly Workout. I'm Nate Wright, and me and a bunch of other inbox goons put together a weekly workout to help people put in reps with business writing specifically, which typically is like boring as hell and it just sucks. But we try to find different ways of making it fun. So the format of this is is the same every week. We start with the topic. We look at how it applies to business, a couple different fixes, and then we do some live rewrites. The presentation portion's about 15 minutes-ish, and the rest of the time we try to focus on writing. If it's your first time here, you're going to write. Or not. You could opt not to, but it's best to get your hands a bit dirty here. Everyone here is chill. We got a couple of regulars on too that will give me an appropriate amount of shit if I'm not being nice. So each one of these workouts that we have could stand alone on its own. It also works together in a series. We're working on getting all of that stuff repackaged so that it actually ties one to the next. We're digging into psychology this month and next. Last week we went into cognitive biases, specifically the confirmation bias. This week we're digging into the sunk cost fallacy. So let's go ahead and dive in here. Sunk cost fallacy. Fallacies in general are universal. They are universal. There is no avoiding them. There are no exceptions to the rule. There's no one that could say, oh, I'm aware of my sunk cost fallacy and could just magically make it go away. It is at a very evolutionary level, caveman, mammoth days, wired into our brains. And in modern society, it is not very helpful just because of cultural norms and economics and all of these other things, the modern trappings that conflict with that old brain. And the sunk cost fallacy in this case, the basic definition is the more you invest in something that's a sinking ship, something that's failing, the harder it is to abandon it. So the more you invest, the harder it is to abandon. Let's go over a couple of examples to kind of highlight what this looks like. You see it all the time in business. You see it in life too. It's like, why do we really need to change anything? We're already invested in this. We're invested in this platform, in this service, in this product. I'm already invested in this relationship. Like, why would I change now? Like, I've already put so much into it. Like, if I leave it, I'm leaving all that money on the table, all that time on the table, all that emotional energy on the table, all of it on the table. There's a lot of reasons and a lot of things you see in life. Gambling is one of the biggest ones, the slot machine effect. When someone's, playing the games, they tend to, so he's like, man, I'm like so far into it now. I need to keep going. And it makes it even worse if they've had a couple of small wins in the beginning, because it gives you this sense of higher value that's really there. And all this stuff, for the most part, with basic math, could be picked apart. But human beings are not calculators. We don't, rationality isn't the top of the list always. It's usually, survival and protection, things of that nature. So in a bad gamble, you see it all the time. I think anyone that's ever, even like fun little gentlemen's bets, have seen stuff go wrong like that. Dating is another classic example. Someone goes on a date, it's going poorly, yet they stay on the date because they've already gotten dressed up, the perfume, their cologne, they've, brushed their teeth, the mouthwash, the planning, all the work that went into finding the swiping right and left on Tinder, all that stuff happens. You finally get to it. It's like, oh my goodness, I really don't like this person, but I'm going to stick to the date because I've already put so much into it. The Another sunk cost fallacy is going to a movie. And this is the one that I am personally most guilty of. Because I go to a movie, I drop my $15 to see it on opening night, and it's just a crap movie. It's just awful. But I stick with it. I don't move from my seat. I continue watching the movie to the very end through to the credits, eating my overpriced popcorn and cavity-inducing candy. Do that. So that is another aspect of or an example of the sunk cost fallacy at work. A bad meal. You go to a restaurant, and I was at Outback Steakhouse and got the bloomin' onion, like one of those things that I haven't had in years, and it was awful. But guess which guy ate the whole damn thing? Me. I ate all of it, and it was gross. Don't do that. but that's something we do all the time. It happens all of the time in business too. But there are ways to actually, in some cases, recognize and overcome your customers, your clients, the people you're trying to sell to in your business. There's a lot of methods that we could bring to bear to help pull them out of that mindset gently, or manipulate them out of that mindset. Or on the flip side, just accept that they are suffering under, the sunk cost fallacy and working around it. So a few ways to approach it. One of the best ones, and this is frankly my go-to approach when I'm selling something in business, if I'm pitching a new product or a service or putting together a campaign, is to ask harder questions. And this is one of the things we went over last week, actually, with confirmation bias, is if you were to do this all again, would you make the same decision? So let me use a business example. I talked to someone yesterday, actually, that had spent 6 months getting their website moved from one platform to another. And it's still not done. After 6 months, it's just dragging on and on and on. And this guy's already in bed with these developers, and clearly it's not working. Like, outside looking in, it's like, man, why are you being such an idiot? But so many people have been in that same situation before and made the same mistakes over and over and over again, and continue making the same mistake of staying in that relationship. So if you ask them again, okay, if you could rewind and step back in time, when the developer first, broke something in the new site or was a week late on a deadline. It was, well, if I was doing it all again, if that happened the first time, I would just fire them and start over. So I wouldn't have been continued to invest money. And that's one of the reasons it's so hard to abandon that poor investment, is because usually when you realize it's a bad investment, you're pretty deep in. And your aversion to loss, which is another very evolutionary thing in all humans, regardless of race, credo, or nationality. It's in us. It's hardwired. So now asking that kind of question isn't something I promote doing in an email. It's like, I don't know, dream customer or dream client, like, if you were to do that all over again, what would you do differently? Like, we're not therapists here, but ideally what we want to do is we want to structure our initial interactions, either email, it could be a headline, it could be a landing page, it could be talking to someone at a cocktail party. But we want to structure things so that people are encouraged to ask themselves that, kind of take them down that rabbit hole. And that, one of the writing workouts we'll do, we'll actually put that to the test. The next thing is to create more contrast. This is something anyone that's seen any of my videos or or ever worked with my team, or if they're familiar with guys like Oren Klaff with Pitch Anything, there's this idea of creating contrast is super important in writing. So you want to create contrast. That's another evolutionary thing, that you want certain things to blend in, to seem familiar, and you want other things to have high contrast. They stand out, the fluorescent vest with hunters. You don't want to get shot, right? When you're dealing with sunk cost fallacy, you need to raise the stakes. You need to make the positive more positive and the negative more negative. And I encourage you to do that regardless of sunk cost fallacy being at play or not. But that being said, what I'm challenging you to do with your writing is to actually almost skew it to the point of being ludicrous. So in this particular example, it's like, oh my goodness, like you're all washed up, you're drunk, but if you stick with this, the contrast is you could be the conquering hero, looking good in your fancy frilly hat, right? That's example one. But in reality, in sunk cost fallacy, like the project's gonna die with or without your intervention. So we could look at it like, okay, here's where you're at now. Like you got your ass kicked, but you could still be the plucky hero here. Or you could stick with it and you could be this other guy. Just getting messed up, right? Just inflicting more damage, making it a more devastating loss, something you're going to regret even more later. And there's things we can do visually and things we can do with words to create more contrast. So that's another way to help people get out of their own heads. The last method, and I've been using this a lot lately because I've been talking to, holidays for us is like our busy season with my day job at Small Biz Triage, is just to address that it's there. Like oftentimes people know this, like, yeah, I know it's dumb, but I've already invested so much. It's like they know they're in a weird spot, and your job as someone that's running a business or selling something for a business or marketing something for a business is to talk them off the edge of the cliff and bring them back into the nice groove hug, into something comfortable and something that will help them. Help them solve a problem, help them, go from happy to unhappy or content to joyful, right? Some sort of emotional change. And one of the ways to do that is just to own it. It's like, yeah, that does suck. Yeah, I have done that before. Like you don't need to feel too guilty about that. I've been there myself. And honestly, most of the times I've encountered it, I don't think I've dealt with it well. I think I've stuck with it too long. I sunk more cost into it and it ended up hurting more later. Recently in my own projects and with some of my clients, I've found little bits of goodness in there, something we can learn. One of the things I use is like, yeah, I still want to see the analytics. Let me look at the numbers. Let me look at the numbers of those failures. Let me see what they did, so that now that you're in, now that you're talking to us, we could actually use some of that. We could lash together the wreckage and build you a raft.